And anybody online, if you get to a point where you can't hear me or something, please let me know. Let us know. Okay, so we're going to talk first about what are the differences between high school and college for anyone, not somebody that has a disability or receives accommodations, but just in general, okay? And some of us have been out of college long enough that we forgot about some of these things, so right? Okay, high school, obviously, is there a problem?
The slides don't match.
Well, I'm past that.
Oh,
Click all the way
sorry.
through that. Click,
Sorry.
click, 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 click. It's the next slide. Are you keeping clicking?
There you go.
Okay. High school obviously is mandatory, right? If you want to graduate and get your diploma, you have to go to high school, and it's usually free. You can go to private school, but it's usually free. And then college, you don't have to go to college. You can go straight to work, right? And we all know that college can be very expensive. That's a very basic difference. One of the big differences is the difference in freedom, right? In high school, generally, students don't have a lot of freedom. You live at home with your parents. You have to take certain classes. They're, arranged in conjunction with your parents. There's certain things you have to take. We have counselors that are in charge of making sure you get the credits that you need. And you're kind of told what to do. And if your behavior warrants it, you're corrected and you get in trouble and all that fun stuff. In college, a lot more freedom. How many of y'all went away to college and found freedom to be quite life-changing? They may be living on their own for the first time. They get to pick what classes they want. They want, they deal with an advisor, but they have a lot of freedom in choosing that. But they're overall, even though you have an advisor, they're responsible for knowing what they need to get to graduate. And then the biggest thing is they are going to be held accountable for their decisions, right? So, and those consequences. So that's a big, big change. The structure is way different. When we're in high school, of course, you have certain times for classes and assignments, and you have classes all day, and you spend a whole day, 6 hours, 30 hours a week in class. And usually there's 35 students or less in a class, and you're usually in one building or at least close together. When you go to college, of course, you're going to set your own schedule. You might have classes Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, Tuesday, Friday night. It can, you're way open to what you choose. And you might only spend a small portion of time in class, like 12 to 16 hours, depending on how many hours you take. And you have all this time in between. Big difference is you might have 100 or more people in your class if you don't start at like a community college. And you may be going from one side of the campus to another to get to class. Our son went to a campus that the classes were all over town in different historical buildings. So it's a big difference in what you have to navigate. As far as study time and reading, in high school, a lot of times students can get away with kind of studying at the last minute, minimal prep, not everyone, of course, but a lot of times you only have to read the material that the teacher told you to read and know the material that's on the review. You may be expected to read independently, but usually when you come back to class, y'all will review what was read and what they need to know for the test. And so you're kind of guided in what you need to learn. So a big jump is when you go to college, and there's going to be a lot more rigorous demands as far as reading and independent work. And you might have to study for every hour that you're in class. They say you should study, usually we'll need 2 to 3 hours outside of class to do the work and the studying and that kind of thing. So you're going to have to review your material regularly. And the biggest thing is that you may have material on your syllabus that you are responsible for that wasn't ever discussed in class. So that's a big difference too, but it might be on the test. There's a big difference between high school teachers and college professors, and not quite as much at the community college, but I know in high school, teachers were pretty good about, reminding students about, you have a due date coming up. How are you doing on this project? You have a test. If you didn't get this work in, you need to get this late assignment in. Oh, you need to get your makeup work. That kind of thing. And if a student looks like they need assistance, we're trained to kind of look and see if they look like they need assistance and to probe and ask them if we can help them and that kind of thing. And, we look at attendance. If you don't have, meet the attendance rule for the state, you don't get credit, okay? Go to college and everything, it's all about the syllabus. You'll hear me talking a lot about the syllabus tonight. That's where everything's going to be as far as, guidelines for grading, due dates, things like that. And if you miss class, you're responsible for getting what you missed. And if you need assistance, I tell kids this every day. If you need assistance in college, it is up to you to ask for it. And that might mean you have to call and make an appointment to go see the professor during hours, talk to them before or after class. I mean, it looks very different. And as far as attendance, different universities and different classes are going to be different. Some have very stringent rules about how much you can miss. Some don't care as long as you get your work done and do well on the test. Our son, again, I've had 4 kids in school. And every one of them's been different, but we have one in a fine arts college, and if they miss 3 classes, it doesn't matter if it was for illness or whatever, you cannot pass because it's fine art lab and things like that. So, I mean, no ifs, ands, or buts. So that's a big difference too. Okay. I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but for high school teachers, we're kind of trained to help students draw conclusions and understand what they're going to need to know. We kind of help them, lead them through that thinking process, right? In college, they're expecting you to be able to do that higher level of thinking. So, and a lot of times you'll have professors, and I think it's very different at Collin, because I think most of the professors at a community college, they want to teach, but a lot of times at the university, the professors are researchers or they're somebody working for tenure, and they may not have been trained in teaching methods. They're all about what the topic is, but they expect students to take the notes and be able to identify what is it that I need to put down? What's the main idea here? And so that's a big jump for a lot of our students. So, but they're responsible. The students are responsible for figuring out what they need to know for that test, or how they need to apply what they've learned to what the syllabus is asking. As far as tests, y'all know that in high school, there's lots of tests and quizzes, and usually several projects per grading period. And this is a really big thing that I almost don't like, that we do so many makeup tests and retests, because I think students depend on that sometimes, and you're not going to get that in college. I've never heard of having that in college. So I think our students sometimes rely on that and think, well, in the back of my mind, I know I can go do that later. Well, that's not going to happen in college. And like I said earlier, we do test reviews, point out the important things to know. And so your grade may not just be about tests. It might be a combination of how you did on tests, what you did on daily work, participation, a variety of things. Whereas in college, you might have 2 tests and 1 big project, and that is your whole grade. So a lot of times students in high school, their daily grades might bring their grade up if they're not as good at test taking. But that may not be the case, depending on what is on that syllabus. So we might only have 2 or 3 tests in college. And another big thing is they're cumulative. I can never say that word, cumulative, where it might be on everything discussed up to that period, not just that unit. So, and like I said, no retests or test corrections. So it's all about being able to apply what you've learned. Grades, like I said earlier, a lot of the students will do better because if they have a lot of different grades in the grade book, daily grades, that brings their grade up. And they, a lot of times in college, aren't going to do those daily grades. They're going to have just several major grades. So, and then in high school, as long as you have a 70 and you meet attendance requirements, you're going to get that credit. In college, you only earn it if the course meets a set standard, and that depends on the college. Usually it's like a 2.0 or a C. So. Okay, so that's kind of in general, right, for a difference between high school and college. Now let's talk about the difference for some of our students that receive some support in high school, whether it's through special education or 504. This is the biggest concept for me. It's the difference between entitlement and eligibility. So when you are in high school and you receive special education services, you are entitled to services. If you have a disability and get some accommodations through ADA, you are entitled to accommodations to help with that. Now, that is all through two different pieces of legislation, IDEA and 504, Section 504. It's all about getting what you need, and you are entitled to get those if you have been identified and met the criteria, right? So it's about remediation as far as special ed. We're trying to help you remediate a disability. But when you go to college, it totally changes. You are eligible. You have to qualify for services, okay? There's not different, universities might have different qualifying requirements for different disabilities. And it's all about, there's no special ed in college. It's all 504. It's all about equal access in college. So instead of being under IDEA for special education in high school, it's under Americans with Disabilities Act. So it's you have to be, meet certain criteria, and it's just to even the playing field for everyone. Does that make sense? And the example I use a lot of times is somebody goes to school to be a doctor. You would want that doctor to have to learn all the same things that everyone else does. So we cannot change what is being learned at the college level. They can change how you learn it and have some accommodations that way. And it's all about prevention of discrimination. So if you have 504 now, that's what you'll have in college. If you have special education now, it goes to 504 in college too. Any questions about that? Okay. Also responsibility, you're entitled to what you get in high school, and it's our responsibility as a school district in special education to provide that evaluation and implement a program for you. In 504, it's a little bit different. They're able to, use doctors' assessments and things like that. It's a little bit different for 504, but the school district's responsible for making sure all that happens, right? But when you go to college, it's all going to be up to the student. So the student has to go and identify themselves, and we'll talk more about that. And they have to provide their documentation. That's why we make sure when they leave special education that they leave with all the right paperwork that they would need. And then the other big difference about that is in high school, the art committee or the 504 committee determines what the goals are and what we're working on. But in college, it's the professor, because everyone has to perform the same things. Okay, modifications. Not all of our students that receive special education services have modified curriculum. In 504, they do not have curriculum that's modified. But that just means that the course content may be modified and maybe not go as deep, or there be some other things that are not covered fully. And I just wanted to make it clear that in college, all students are required to complete all the same things, like I said, so there's no modifications in college. So that's a big difference too. Okay, self-advocacy is a huge one. We want to work in high school as much as possible on getting our students to advocate for themselves and to speak up when they need help and all that. But they're new at it a lot of times, and it's very difficult for them. But I feel very strongly that they need to know what their disability is. They need to know what their accommodations are. They need to know what their strengths and challenges are, strengths especially, because they're going to have to give all this information when they go to college. Because it's all up to the student. So they have to be able to go in and say, hey, I got services in high school, and these are the accommodations I got, and then go through the process that school has. So that's a big shift. FERPA is just the Privacy Act that protects private information for a student. So when your student turns 18, all educational rights transfer to your son or daughter, whether they're in high school or college. So at that point, when they go to college, the private information is going to go to the student, okay? Now, if you're like me, you're like, well, I'm paying the bill. I want to know what the grades are. Well, what we do is we have agreements with our kids that they would have to, let us log in, or we'd have access, and they had to report to us how they're doing. But you don't have a right to that, even if you're paying the bills, okay? You can sign a form with the university, a FERPA form, but that gives you access to their grades and to be able to access that, but it does not give you access to the instructors, to talk to the instructors and advocate for them. You can't do business with the instructor. It's just for the grade part. So that's a big difference too. Okay. Any questions about any of that? Okay, let's talk about college admissions and testing. First of all, when you go to a two-year college, they have what they call open enrollment. And so they have, you do not have to have a certain grade point. They don't look at your rank, and you don't have to take the SAT or the ACT. You will have to do some other things that we'll talk about. Four-year universities, they're all going to have different requirements. I think everyone is back to doing SAT and ACT now after COVID. Is that right?
There are still a lot of many test optional schools.
Okay. Since COVID, there are some. Is there a problem?
There's just a question.
Oh, okay.
There's a question on the previous slide about the difference between accommodations and modifications.
Okay. We'll go back to that.
Okay.
And so some colleges aren't requiring that now. I don't know if they'll get back to doing that fully, but some universities will look at GPA, rank, SAT, ACT, whether you volunteered, what your essay's like. I mean, it just depends on the school. And I think they do a really good job of having all that on their website. And then there's also some different tools that Ms. Schultz can help with to have students look at that, access that. So there was a question about the difference between modifications and accommodations.
What's the difference between accommodations and the modifications? And what's the impact of both in post-secondary education?
Well, there are no modifications in post-secondary education. So modifications means that the curriculum is changed or not covered as deeply. And it changes what is learned. An accommodation changes how it is learned. So an accommodation might be like extra time on a test, or being able to, type your answers instead of write them, or, having a test read to you. A modification might mean that it doesn't cover all the same things, or they're given, can you think of another example?
Shorter test.
Yeah.
Shortened assignments?
Shortened assignments that don't cover everything. Now you can have a shortened assignment that still covers all this material. So I hope that answers. Is there another question?
May I, this is Julia, this is Paula Bekvar. I asked a question. So my question was more towards what is the impact on the diploma, the high school diploma that my kid.
Everyone in Texas receives the same diploma, whether they have modified curriculum or not. And there's nothing on your high school diploma in Texas that says anything about special education, anything about any modified curriculum. So the trick is when you may have gotten modified curriculum in high school, but when you go to college, it used to be you had to start at a two-year college with modified curriculum. That is not the case anymore, but you have to score well enough on the tests and things and meet the entrance requirements.
ACT and the SAT?
Yeah, or the TSI.
Or the TSI.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Thank you.
As far as like a modification, not a modification, but an accommodation such as like getting something read to you, would that carry over?
Okay, we'll talk about that. It may. I mean, the big thing I want y'all to leave here with tonight is just because you get certain accommodations in high school does not mean you will get them in college.
Okay.
So good question. And then I'm going to ask if somebody has a question that they put it in the chat. I think that'd be just easier.
Yes.
Okay, so, but again, if you receive modified curriculum, you can go straight to a 4-year now. You just have to be able to meet all the requirements. SAT and ACT tests. You can apply for accommodations. Some of y'all probably have already applied for accommodations, maybe for the PSAT or the SAT or the ACT. And you're not guaranteed to get the same ones. But some of the typical ones that students might get is the small group administration, having a longer period of time to complete it, oral administration, but it's all based on disability and evaluation and all that. So I've seen students get things that I was surprised they got, and I've seen them college board say no, and I've seen people appeal and get it, and it just, you never know. But we have a testing coordinator at both of our high schools that I'll give you information for, and they can help you with any of that. So So
So just
basically,
because you got it in your regular classroom does not mean that it's automatically going to your SAT or ACT.
absolutely.
You have to go through the college board and
Yeah.
request it. And that's what the testing coordinator helps with.
And then I can just tell you in general, on the PSAT, SAT, and ACT, they're submitted, but it's not guaranteed, like she said. 504 students might have to submit additional documentation because your documentation may not be as thorough as our full individual evaluation that we do for special education. And usually they need, cognitive achievement tests, medical, psychiatric, or neurological for with current updates. So they're really looking at the stuff. So we have somebody that will help you with that. I won't go into this in detail because it's in your slides, but basically the process is different for PSAT, SAT, and ACT. The PSAT and the SAT, that's handled through your ARD meeting in 504. And once you apply and get accommodations, you don't have to keep doing it every time you take the test. Where ACT, you have to do it every time you're testing. Okay, and that's initiated by the parent on the website or the student on the website. So, but again, I won't go through all that, but the testing coordinator information is at the end and she'd be able to help you with that. Okay. Want to talk about the TSI? Oh, yes, ma'am.
Wait.
Just about the PSAT, how do you know what was granted for the student?
I thought that they would, the special education.
So like, does that come from the school, from what was granted for the testing, or are you supposed to receive a letter from PSAT people? I'm not sure.
I
The
thought that
testing
you-
coordinator, I believe, gets all the approval letters.
But I would think
The
that-
ACT, you actually have to apply, get the approval and submit it to the testing
But she's
coordinator.
just wondering who gets the notification on the PSAT is
Like,
different.
what was granted?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'll text somebody and find out. Okay.
And then we have one more question here.
Okay. One more question. Yeah.
Yeah, are you looking at me, Renee?
Yes, ma'am.
My question is, we're gonna have access to this slideshow, right? With all this
Absolutely.
information in it?
You bet. And it has links on it and stuff too. Yeah. I'll
Perfect.
share when I send out the recorded version of this. I'll also send out the slides.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Right. Fantastic. I get the glamorous job of talking about the TSI.
So she had a question.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is, and it's listed on there. I just didn't go into all the details. The parent starts the process and that will send something to the school. So yeah. Yes, ma'am.
We have one more question online.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you started the conversation around Texas Success Initiative. Have you started that? I don't want to.
That's what we're talking about right now.
Okay, so my question is, even though the child has taken like SAT, he or she, everybody is still required to take this TSI.
If you took the SAT or the ACT and you received a certain score, you would be exempt from the TSI. And I think Alicia will talk about that too. Ms. Schultz will talk about that.
Okay, do we have to file some kind of documentation to show that we've taken it?
Yeah, she'll talk about that, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. So the TSI is a state requirement for proving that a student is ready for college classes. It is not a pass or fail test. I hear a lot of students asking, oh, am I going to pass the TSI? It is not a pass or fail. It is a placement test. It will not keep you out of taking classes, but it is something that is required to take before you enter into a higher education institution here in Texas.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you had the clicker.
I do have the clicker. I stole it. Okay, so the way the TSI works, like I said, it's a placement test, and students will either be placed into college level classes, meaning all of the college catalog is available to them. Or if they score one level below that, it's a yes, you can take college level courses, but you need a support class along with it to maybe give you a little bit of extra support for that subject. And then the first level would be your foundation courses. So this is saying, okay, let's build up your foundation before we move on to those college classes. Now, there is a chance that a student may not score at that foundation level. That does not mean that they can't take classes at College. It just means that they wouldn't take the college level classes. All of our workforce classes, health sciences, computer technology, many of those do not require the TSI to be at college level. All right, any questions about that? Okay, perfect. So the TSI, if you don't place it, we also have the TSI bootcamp. Okay, so what to expect? It's a multiple choice. It is on the computer, and you can take it if you're coming to Collin either at Collin College or online. The questions are adaptive, so they do increase in difficulty as students answer either correctly or incorrectly. These assessments are untimed. So a lot of times we get questions about, can I get extended time on the testing? Well, technically the TSI is already untimed. There is a built-in calculator as well. So students get that built into the test. They don't have to ask for an accommodation for that. But I will give you a tip about if you do the TSI in person on a college campus, it is much easier to deal with the untimed part. If you schedule it on a virtual session, it is more convenient, but you have to pay for every virtual session you sit for. Does that make sense? So if you want to spread out the TSI over 3 separate days, in person, there's no charge for that. If you do it online, you're paying for 3 separate testing sessions. So just wanted to give you information about that. There is you can apply for accommodations on the TSI. There aren't that many though, again, because it is untimed, there are built-in calculators, but they have allowed students to have readers in the past or some other types of accommodations depending on what they might need. So there's 3 sections. There's the math section, which covers your basic algebra, geometry, trigonometry, things like that. There's 40 questions total. Then there's the ELAR section, which stands for English, Language Arts, and Reading. That section has 40 to 48 questions, depending on, again, the answers along the way. And then there's an essay portion of the test. The essay is 300 to 600 words. And when they're assessing the essay, word count does matter. If students are at 300 words, they will not get the score they need to score at college level. And then the variation in word choice, grammar, sentence structure, punctuation, all of that will be looked at on the essay. Now, the reason we can't say for sure how many questions will be on the TSI, there's sort of 2 chances to score at college level. One are the regular questions. If a student scores at college level with those, the test is shorter, they move on with their lives. If the first set of questions they don't score at college level, they're given another set of questions to then try and score at college level. Those are called the diagnostics. So that's why you see that asterisk there under the diagnostic test. So there could be up to 5 sections on the TSI depending on if you get that diagnostic. Any question about that? Yes.
She's asking about how to apply for accommodations.
Asking about accommodations for the essay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there, do they have an option to use spell check?
That's a great question. Is there a spell check in the essay? There is not, but it's not that 1 mistake or 2 mistakes will affect their score. It's the overall quality of the essay and the thought development too. So if there are some spelling mistakes, that it's not going to affect them overall. It's just things to pay attention to. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Good.
Mhm.
So, you know, that's a handicap for the students.
Mhm.
They're not to be able to have that, and, fail check.
Mhm.
Why they on these types of exams, they're really at disadvantage.
Absolutely. That little squiggly line gets me all the time. So with that, I think that's where it's good to remember that it's the placement test. And even if they don't score at college level, that next level, they still get to take college classes. They just get a support class with it.
I know
For
you're
that cost.
Um,
At a cost and no credit.
That class is part of it. So it does count for credit.
It does.
Mhm, yes.
I know your specialty is Texas, but do other states have similar requirements like this if your student is to go to Arkansas or Oklahoma or wherever? Like, are there different state test requirements for different states or not?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is the Texas Success Initiative, so it is a Texas state law. Other states do have something similar, but not everywhere, and I'm not quite sure what they are.
So if your student took the TSI and the college looked at that, they would maybe not make them do it again for Oklahoma.
They would not honor it because it's a Texas measurement. No. Did somebody else have a question?
Online does. How do we know if our students need to take the TSI if they've already taken the SAT?
That is a great question, and I believe that is a perfect transition. Thank you very
Segue.
much. So if a student has taken the SAT or the ACT, they can apply for an exemption from the TSI. So you need certain scores on that. On the SAT, you need a 480 on the English reading section or a 530 on the math section. For the ACT, you need a 23 composite and then a 19 on English or a 19 on math. And if you have, let's say you have a 490 on the SAT English, but a 510 on the math, you can get an exemption for the TSI ELAR, and then the student would just need to take the math portion of the TSI. Does that make sense? So you can get a partial exemption. And the way you would get that exemption, we have what's called the Conditional Testing Compliance Contract, or CTCC. And it basically is a document that you fill out online. I have the link for that. You can absolutely reach out to me for it, where you say, I have SAT scores. Here is the PDF copy that I can get from College Board. I'm going to attach it to my CTCC, send it to our testing office, and they will apply that to the Collin account. And then you just send the official scores from College Board or ACT to Collin's testing office.
And if you've taken the SAT more than once and you have like higher scores on, you just scan in both?
Yes, yeah. If you've taken it twice and you have the 480 on the first attempt and the 530 for math on the second attempt, go ahead and include both scores. It does not have to be on the same test. We will take whatever you have. Any other question about that? Yeah.
Is that just for Collin County? I mean, like, that's for any college, right?
That is for any
college?
Texas college. Yeah. Now, how they get the scores on the account, that might differ, but these minimum requirements, those are statewide.
And when you said that this, like the support class, for instance, if my son or daughter is applying to Texas Tech and they have to take a support class with Texas Tech, do they also honor that as a credit as well, like Collin does?
The support class, it's called INRW, and the transferring institution, the 4-year, would not look at that as college credit towards the degree plan, but it may come in as elective credit.
And let me just say one thing is it's not the end of the world if your student ends up in a developmental, or are they calling them developmental or remedial, or?
They are technically called developmental. I like to call them the foundation classes.
Foundation classes. But it's not the end of the world. I mean, one of our 4 ended up in, she was in pre-cal in high school and she ended up in the math, didn't she? Yeah. And so, she just spent a semester in there and went on. So it's not the end of the world, and it's not just, for our students that have, learning differences. So.
Yeah, not at all. And it's to help set them up for success later on. And those classes, the teachers, some of them have won national awards for teaching. So they are really, really good teachers as well. Any other questions about the TSI? All right. And again, workforce classes, tech classes, health sciences, technology, construction, welding, auto, all of that. A lot of them do not require the TSI if you're just doing the certificate level program. So for students who may need a little bit more time to come up to college level, those are a great entry point as well. If they were interested in health sciences, they could start with the CNA and then look at applying for those college level classes. All right, I think that's the last one. TSI, the pre-assessment activity. So if students do have to take the TSI, they have to do what's called the PAA, the pre-assessment activity first. It's like a practice test. It takes about 10 or 15 minutes. It has, types of test questions, feedback on why you may have gotten this correct or may have gotten this wrong. And it is something you have to do before you can schedule the TSI. And there are study resources for the TSI as well. AccuPlacer is the company that puts out TSI. Their study guide is really fabulous, especially on that essay, because in order to score at college level, you need a 5 on the essay. So the study guide has, here is an example of an essay that scores a 3. Here is an example of an essay that scores a 5. So you can see the differences in how those essays were written, even with some mistakes in there. All right.
Yeah, I totally recommend the practice TSIs a lot to kind of gauge where you're at and what you might want to focus on. And I mean, even as a junior, you can apply to Collin and get a college ID number and pay to take the test.
Absolutely. Or if you're in dual credit, you might do that as well. And once you've done it and scored if you score at college level, you are good to go. You can always take it again as well. This is not a one and done. Students can always take it again. Right. Yes.
Yes, all these are free.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
And when I send you the PowerPoint, you'll have access. You can click on the links.
Sure. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, or for dual credit, you can get a waiver if they have PSAT scores or STAR scores at a certain level as well. And the PSAT is a 460 on the English and reading, a 510 on the math, STAR English 1, 4,000, STAR English 2, 4,000, STAR Algebra 1, 4,000 with an Algebra 2 final grade of 70%. So.
You're Vanna.
And can I say my college panel
Absolutely.
right now?
Yeah.
So I'm going to just point a privilege now since I have the floor. Tomorrow night at Rock Hill High School, I'm putting together a college panel, Finding Your Fit. I have a representative from Texas Tech, a large state school, Trinity University, a smaller private liberal arts school, and Collin College to kind of talk about the different college environments and what might be best. It's tomorrow night in the auditorium at Rock Hill at 6 o'clock. So I'll see you there.
Perfect timing. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to talk about disability services. So this is really important information. So sometimes students will say they don't want to access disability services, and I always recommend that you go ahead and do what you need to do to get hooked up with them, just in case, because a lot of times we'll have students that later in the semester, when they're not doing very well without the supports, they're like, I need it. And sometimes it's too late for that semester because there's a process involved. But disability services at every college may go by a different name. I find the easiest way to find them is just to go to the college website. And if you put the word disability in the search engine, usually it'll go straight to whatever those disability services are. But importantly, just remember there's no special education in college, okay? All universities are required to offer these accommodations under the Americans with Disabilities Act, but just like anything else, there's going to be some programs that are better than others, okay? Collin has a wonderful disability services. It's called Access. I've worked with them for years. It's a very good program. But you can also pay extra for some different programs at some schools. Like Texas Tech, for example, has things that you can pay extra for students with autism, students with attention, executive functioning difficulties, and things like that. So there's different programs like that too, and they're springing up more and more. at different universities, but a lot of those you pay extra for. And while I'm thinking about it, let me just say that there are a lot of services that are offered to every student that can help your student though. Like at Collin, they have disability services, but they also have math labs. You can submit your papers to be looked at, to help with your writing. So there's a lot of things that might here seem to be under the 504 or special education umbrella that is offered to anybody, some of those extra services. So, but generally, I would always look at the disability services when you're looking at a college and, ask any questions you might have.
We have a couple of questions online real quick.
Okay.
The one question is do we know any due dates for SAT and PSAT, or is the testing coordinator the best?
Testing coordinator.
The testing
and actually, you can Google and find those. If you
Through
just
the
go
College
to
Board?
College Board and SAT, ACT, and it's all online.
The due dates
Yeah.
for all of that?
Or when they're like they have to apply.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like by what day do they have to apply to get the accommodations?
Yes, that's all on there.
And then regarding tomorrow's program, is that for both parents and students or just students alone?
It is for both parents and students.
It's for both parents and students.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Okay, Alicia, you're at the Salina campus here?
No, I am here at Prosper and at Rock Hill.
Oh, so you're at the high school.
So that's her
Oh,
job,
okay,
yeah.
Perfect.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the accommodations that you will see at the college level. This is definitely not, a complete list, and these are not guaranteed. It's all depending on your paperwork and what you received in high school, and it goes to a committee. At every school has a committee that decides these things. So extended time on exams. Okay, I have taken in the testing center. That's because you can't have extra time in a classroom because it's not gonna be a good setting for that. On the other hand, I also tell students that going to the testing center for a quiet place that's not always the way it'll be in college. Sometimes the quieter place is taking it in the classroom. So going to the testing center isn't necessarily the best thing. Let's see, readers or scribes for testing. Adaptive technology, they have some really cool things like pens that help read, smart pens that help you record your notes. And
Yeah, they'll take in what is said and then transcribe it.
yeah, crazy stuff. Books in alternative format, are students that might have struggled with reading and be able to listen to books. Copy of notes, sometimes that looks different in college. It might be somebody that will take notes for you and share their notes. But a lot of times the instructor in college shares all that anyway. A lot of times they have those all posted. Specific accommodations for a hearing impairment or a visual impairment. But a lot of the accommodations that our students receive now are things that the student just kind of has to put in place themselves. Like if they had sitting near the front of the class or in a least distractible area, it's up to the student to do that themselves. So, but that's a list of a lot of the common accommodations. And these are just some examples of those different support programs at Tech. And University of North Texas just started a new one called Engage for neurodiverse groups. And they have an application process, and I know that one has a waiting list right now. So if you're interested in any of these programs, you would want to check them out before you're about to head there. Okay, so this is a question a lot of people have. When do you disclose that you have a disability? Okay, so a school does not want you to disclose that. It's not part of the application process at all. It's illegal for them to ask if you have a disability, okay? I would definitely recommend that you explore their disability services, but it's not gonna be part of your application. Now, the only time where that might be an exception is if you have maybe irregularities on your record, because maybe you didn't get services until you weren't identified until your junior year and your GPA was lower, maybe because of 9th and 10th grade. If there's something like that where maybe it would be helpful, you could maybe do that. And that would be maybe through a letter or, through your essay. It could be different ways to do that. but they can't ask you. So after you're accepted, that's when you're going to go ahead and go to disability services and start that whole process. Okay. And again, like I said earlier, it's the students are going to be responsible for providing that information and seeking assistance through disability services. Usually, I think pretty much without exception, they want that documentation to be no older than 3 years old. And I know I can speak for special education. I know we're very careful to make sure that we do an evaluation towards the end of high school so that it's very up to date. And for 504, I think it happens more often that they might need another evaluation. We're going to talk about Texas Workforce Solutions a little bit later, and sometimes they're able to help with that piece and help with that. And then sometimes they might need additional information other than your paperwork, like they may need, doctor's note about ADD or other outside documentation if it's psychiatric, that kind of thing. I know for Colin, they have a section on their website that says exactly what documentation is required for each area of disability. So they do a real good job with that. One thing is dyslexia. We were told that you might, if your paperwork is not very current, that you can contact the dyslexia specialist at the school about getting an updated evaluation. So if you think you need that, I would do that as early as you can your senior year. So that's fresh and new. Okay. The intake process, that's going to be different for every university, but basically you contact disability services and they're going to have you do an application, and then they're going to have you schedule an initial meeting. I think sometimes that's even done online now, like everything else. And you're going to have your an advisor, and you're going to talk to them about what you got previously in high school, what accommodations you would like to have in college. You're going to present your evaluation and your IEP or your 504 plan. And then they are going to take that to a committee. Usually they meet like twice a month or once a month, depending on the time of year. And then they're going to come back with a list of accommodations that they are granting you. Okay. And they're very reasonable. I really have seen some really good plans where they were very accommodating. So, and once they've been granted those accommodations, it doesn't just end there. It's not like here where the teachers get that list and they, have to make sure that it all happens by law. Here, the professors receive an email, but it's still up to the student to follow up with the professor. I know at Collin, they actually have a letter that has all the accommodations. So, and that can be very intimidating for someone that's not used to talking to their teachers and communicating, with adults. And we'll talk more about that later, why it's so important for our students to do that, because they have to initiate that contact with their professor about their accommodations. And they have to do it every semester. So, any questions about any of that? Yes, ma'am.
So, say a student goes and talks to their professor, and I don't know, you guys have had bad experiences with professors, but I had good ones and bad ones.
Yeah.
If there's a problem, is that when you would go back to the initial counsel?
Yes, they would go back to Access or their disability services.
Okay.
A person, and I think also, at least at Collin, I know they're really good at knowing, advising on if there's certain professors that work better with students than others, and but definitely they want to be, an advocate for them. They're just not going to be responsible for making, sure that stuff's communicated, but they will help if there's an issue, definitely. Because, it's kind of like bedside manner. Some professors are going to be better at this and some, yes.
We have one more question.
Uh-huh.
Who had a question? They can talk now.
Oh, okay, it's me. Okay, so I have a question about the dyslexia. My son has the IEP, and
An IEP.
but he'll be a senior next year, so he needs to get the reevaluation. And then when he goes to college, he needs to apply for the 504. How does that work? Because he can't take the IEP with him.
That's what we're saying here. He'll apply for accommodations in college, and it will automatically be 504 because they don't do special education in college. So, but
Okay.
he will make sure his evaluation is less than 3 years old, because by law in special education and high school, we have to do an evaluation every 3 years.
Yes, I know that. I was just trying to see, okay, if he needs to do one and he gets it, how does that transfer over? So just whenever he goes to college, it'll be a 504.
Right. The committee is gonna look at his paperwork and what accommodations he's requesting, and they're gonna make a decision on which of those accommodations he will get.
Part of the
Okay.
application for the student services is to provide that documentation.
The evaluation and the 504 plan or the IEP.
Right.
Okay. Okay. I just needed some clarification. Thank you.
Sure.
there-
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make a comment. I'm a college professor. I'm in income commerce, and with our disability services, once our students identify and they need disability services, they're assessed as far as accommodations. Our disability, we will have some disability services that will get their students scheduled every semester and send out notification to those professors on what accommodations that they are allowed in that semester. So that's just,
Well, and Colin does too,
Yeah.
but the student is still responsible for bringing the letter. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Can you clarify? They didn't hear that.
Yes, we have a professor in the audience from A&M Commerce, and she says that the professors there are, notified as to what accommodations students should receive. But the student, at least at Collin, they still have to provide the letter and go make that contact. And you would want them to make contact with the professor too. And it's hard for some, isn't it? Yeah. Is there another question?
She just wanted to clarify
Okay.
that tomorrow.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about different post-secondary options, because it's not just necessarily college, right? So I'm a huge advocate. I'm a big cheerleader of Collin College. One of my students started there, and not only does it save you so much money, but especially if they don't know what they want to do for sure, or if they maybe need to improve on their study skills and advocating for themselves and stuff. Collin is such a great place to start. The location, the smaller classes, I could go on and on. It's a great way to get those core classes done. And the biggest thing is that there's just a lot more support there in helping with that transition to college because of the size. Like Ms. Schultz said, I'm telling you, so many professors have won national awards at Collin. I just think it's a no-brainer if you have any doubt, start at Collin. And unfortunately, I've had lots and lots of students that have gone away to college and ended up coming back and going to Collin. And that's okay. But it's a great bridge to four-year college too. Open enrollment, all that. And especially if you don't know what you want to do. Alicia Schultz talked a little bit earlier about certification programs that on some of those you don't have to take the TSI test. I think certification programs are a great way to try different careers, maybe get a better job while you're going to college if you're having to pay for some things. And they have them in so many different fields. And certification programs aren't just at Collin College. They have them sometimes at continuing ed programs, online. There's online certification programs. Texas Workforce has access to some of those things. But Collin College continuing ed, they have over 70 different certificates, and I may need to update that. It's probably more now, in all kinds of different fields. And I know a lot of adults that have gone and done those programs, and changed careers. So don't forget about those certification programs. And then trade technical programs, talking about one of our kids again. We have a daughter who's 20 who never planned to go to college. That was just not her thing. She has wanted to do cosmetology all her life. She's 20 years old, works at a high-end salon, is loving the life. I mean, she graduated from Aveda and just most days loving the life. Right? She's 20, I mean, and that's just her route. My nephew started at Collin. He never really liked school. School was difficult for him. And he went to college because he thought he was supposed to. Well, he ended up going to a private trade vocational school. And he works on diesel truck. He got a diesel truck engine, but he works on Rolls-Royce airplanes. Yeah. And he does very, very well right out of school. So I always encourage people to look at all the different options.
And we
that
are in
out
such
there.
great need now.
Absolutely.
for
These are all
trades.
careers that we're going to pay for the prices going up in automotive and HVAC and all these things because there's people retiring that aren't being replaced. So the biggest thing for me on this is that.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to add with the certification programs and the trades. Our automotive and welding departments are having trouble keeping people at Collin to finish their degrees because they're being poached by companies because they're in such demand. And we're actually trying to bribe the companies to let the students stay and finish their degree. And then the companies pay for them to finish their degree.
Yeah. And what she's talking about is this Collin College, the Collin Technical Center. It is gorgeous. It is state of the art everything, partnerships with Mercedes, Toyota, just state of the art everything. And I tried to tell my nephew, wait until this opens. He paid all this money and had loans to go to another one. And I'm like, it's the same education, the same certification tests, all that. Beautiful state of the art. And the thing about the trade technical programs is our students are able to go straight to what their interest is. If they didn't like English and math and all those things and they struggled, sometimes it's a great option to be able to go straight to where their interest is. But wow, what a great thing to hear that they're poaching them, really, you know. And what I really like about Collin's program is they have committed to changing what their tech programs are over the years in terms of what we need in this area. So like right now we have construction management is a big one there. Of course, that is huge where we live. But if they see the need in Collin County to kind of go a different direction or add a program, that's what they're committed to doing is what we need in this area. So, but if you have a chance to go on a tour, it's really nice.
That's the one in Allen, just at 121 in Alma.
Don't they have a bachelor's degree now too?
We do a bachelor's degree in construction management and a bachelor's degree in cybersecurity.
And then nursing.
And nursing, yep.
Yeah. Yep.
So, for Collin prices.
And this may not apply to anyone in here, but I just want to let you know, there are other, Texas is kind of behind things in terms of disability services sometimes, but we're finally starting to develop some programs at the four-year colleges that are inclusive programs for our students that might have intellectual and developmental disabilities. And so that's always an option. And that's just some information about where you can get more information at thinkcollege.net. There's like 250 programs in the US and Texas is way behind, but there's one at A&M, there's a new one at UNT, there's some in Oklahoma. So if that's something you're interested in for anyone, that's a good link to go to.
We have a quick question.
This may be silly, but what is an intellectual disability?
An intellectual disability would be someone that has cognitive challenges that score at a level where they would be termed an intellectual disability or a cognitive disability. And they would more than likely be in one of our centralized programs.
Okay, so it's not ADHD.
No.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you.
Good question. Okay, scholarships. Y'all, there's a lot of scholarships that do not get claimed, am I right? Mm-hmm. And please chime in. But, you know, having a disability, that's a minority, right? Just like any other minority, there's going to be some scholarships that apply to individuals with disabilities. Now, there might be some that are just in general for someone that has learning differences. There might be someone specific, a scholarship specific to autism or a learning disability or ADHD. There's really every kind of scholarship you could ever think of. And I just always tell, or it might be if you're looking at a certain career, it might be for somebody with a disability that's wanting to be an engineer, or there's just a wide variety. I always just tell people to go into Google and put search for, and then what your areas you're looking at. And then here are some different sites that I've listed at the bottom. Do you have any others that you recommend?
Fastweb.com, goingmary.com, and Sally Mae, even though they have loans, but their scholarship search is actually very, very good.
Will you remind me, and I'll add those into the slides before I send them out to y'all. That's okay. But definitely, you know, work on these earlier than later. And then don't forget about our Prosper Scholarship too, Prosper SD Scholarship. Texas Workforce Solutions. So how many of y'all have heard of Texas Workforce? So it's our state's vocational rehabilitation agency. And we actually, it's part of Texas Workforce Commission. Texas Workforce Commission is kind of like the side for unemployment for anybody, but Texas Workforce Solutions is for vocational rehabilitation for somebody with a disability. So just to help people be more independent and prepare for a career. So for our students in high school, that might be to help them get their first job. It might be to help them get the social skills they need to get a job, but it also might be helping prepare for college, might even be to help pay for something like books or maybe helping with the community college classes. They have counseling and guidance. They have summer camps that you can participate in for college readiness. There's a summer earn and learn where students get internship experience at their first job. There's all kinds of different services that they offer. So they would be students with special education or 504 could apply for services with Texas Workforce. And we have our own counselor for Prosper ISD, and he is here on Mondays, but I'm going to give you the information and how to reach him. His name is Adam Alou. And what we recommend is that you reach out to him, and he will get back to you with information about the types of services they have and the application process. If you have a senior, you definitely want to do it as soon as possible because the process takes a while. And if you wait until after Christmas, the senior year, you'd have to deal with an adult counselor at a Texas Workforce office. If you have any doubt whether this agency might be of assistance, I would check it out. Texas Tech, for example, has a college readiness summer program that we've had students go to. There's a camps like that at UNT. There's a live and learn where they go stay on campus for 2 weeks and learn college readiness and independent living skills. And it's all paid for by transition funds. So definitely something to think about. And that's his contact information. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, real quick, because I know we're doing pretty good. Okay, so I've talked so much and I have given y'all so much information, but what can y'all do right now to help your students get ready for college? That's kind of what we're going to talk about now. Well, first of all, there's certain critical skills that they say that you really need to be successful in college. And I think it's so important to talk about these things because a lot of these things, our kids are so busy and we want them to be successful that sometimes we forget that we really need to work on these things because we're with them here now. But if they go to school, we are not going to be there for them to do all these things. So it's really important that they know how to navigate email, that they're able to communicate face to face. I'll never forget our daughter, I think she was 15, and she didn't want to go in order at Chick-fil-A. She's like, you do it for me, but she was being all weird. And I'm like, you have your permit and you think you're about to get your license, but you won't go talk to the guy at Chick-fil-A. And of course she got out of the car immediately, but make them talk to people, make them, get off the device and talk face to face to people because they're going to have to do that at school. Communicating in the classroom. A big thing is being lecture ready. Do they know that when they get to college, they have to be ready for class and ready to focus and all that, and that they need to be able to consult their syllabus. The syllabus is everything in college, everything. I actually don't know why I have those two things under communication. Okay, so, and things that you can do to work on this is send emails to your kid. Okay, is your child emailing their teacher when they need assistance, or are you emailing the teacher to find out what's going on?
We have a question.
Okay, let me get through this.
Okay.
Practice making phone calls. Again, they don't want to make phone calls. They just want to, they think everything has to be texted. And then big thing, remind them that writing on an email or in anything, it's not the same as texting. You don't use those, short acronyms and, all that. And make them take the earphones out when they're talking to people. And then practice Zoom meetings. I thought that was a really good tip. What's the question?
My question was Zoom meetings. You skipped over it in the last one, and I'm like, oh, that's funny. I just found it humorous that you skipped over Zoom, but you did address it here, so I think it was just,
Oh, okay.
it wasn't deliberate, but it was funny.
Well, no, well, yeah, I appreciate that.
Yes.
That's fine.
We're
And
gonna-
by the way, I'm very ADD actually, so I will miss other things too. So, okay, so these are just some suggestions. Another critical skill is technology. One of my very good friends, Dr. Holton, she's actually spoken here for us, and I may bring her back later in the year. She's a professor at Collin, and she tells so many stories about students that come to Collin and just don't have a clue about so many of these things. And she teaches the college success class, learning frameworks, which is a great class for students to take, and they have to take it sometimes if they're on probation. But it's a great study skills, learning how to
Do college.
Yeah, do college. But it's really important that they need to know how to do all the technology stuff. And we know that kids are very tech savvy, but do they know how to use whatever the learning management system is? So here we use Google Classroom and things, but will they be able to navigate Canvas? Or I think Canvas is called something else now. I just started something and it's got a different name, but will they be able to navigate that? So once you find out where you're going to school, find out what learning management system they have. Finding the syllabus, everything's online. Can they create documents? A lot of these things sound simple and of course they do, but do they really know how to do these things independently? Proofreading. Almost every single teacher input form we get says that they don't check their work. We see that all the time. And so, what do you think? I was pointing at you?
Yeah. I have to proofread my stuff.
She just are they able to research and find, the things that they need for an assignment? And then again, the Zoom. So things that you can do is have them use a proofreading program. Grammarly can be added to anything. It can be added to our software. I didn't know that the other day. Are they checking their grades in Skyward themselves? They're going to need to be able to do that at whatever learning management system. I love this. It's so easy to say this, but setting that digital sunset time and no tech time, like where they, at a certain time of night, they have to, you're done. And, helping them set those boundaries. Learning to search for tutorials for how to. I don't know about y'all, but you can find the answer to anything online if you know how to do it. And they need to be able to do that.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
They already know.
Yeah, there's instructions on how to do anything on YouTube. Managing documents in the cloud. Can they do all the, the storage system, manage Google files? I don't even know how to describe it. You'd be better. But, all those tiers of organizing your work. Are they able to do that? And then learning that management system once they know where they're going to go. Self-management, big one. Again, the syllabus. Do they use a planner? When I say planner, it does not have to be a paper planner. Most students don't like that anymore, but do they have a system of organization that works for them? That's one of the questions that Ms. Murray and I and Drew ask every day to students, and it's like half the time they don't. Is it their phone?
They wait for Google Classroom to ding at them.
Yeah.
That they're missing something.
That they're missing something. Yeah, you
Right.
wait till you're notified that something, that's not going to work in college, because guess what? They're not going to notify you.
And they may not accept late work in
They-
college.
They probably won't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So having some type of system. Use of reminders, though. Reminders are great. Are they using their device to remind them of things? And the biggest thing is seeking help. They gotta reach out for help. And they got to do it early. Like, for example, some of the things that they have for help, the Collin College, the writing lab is great, but you can't turn it into the day before it's due and ask, expect to get back feedback and all that kind of thing. So you have to seek help early. But that's really hard for our students a lot of times. And then just the whole process for support. Is it, I need to contact my professor? Do I need to send an email to somebody? What are the guidelines and what is expected in each class? Some things that you can do, and I really try to do this, but modeling that organization piece. Do you use a planner? Do you use reminders? Do you, have good organization skills? Can you organize that? Can you model that? And if that's not a strength of yours, talk to them about it and work on it together. Asking questions before you just tell your student, your son or daughter, what to do or give them advice. Ask them questions and help them get to those answers themselves. Practicing things like talking to people and introducing themselves and how you act in public, all those things. Again, being ready for when you get into class. Let them run errands. Let them make their own appointments for the dentist. Let them pick up their own prescriptions. If they take medication, let them, all these things that, this is rehearsal time, but it's going to be the show very soon when they go to college. Anything you can do to where they're managing more. In our transition program, I'm always asking, what can we stop doing for the student? How can we back out of the picture? And y'all can be the same way. What can I stop doing for my child that they can do? Because they can do these things. So like every month or every week, set a goal of what you're not going to do for your kid. And I know, I'm a parent, sometimes it's easier just to do it, but just be thinking about what it's going to be like when you're not with them next year or whatever year. Let's see. So I love this visual. This is just some things that professors expect that you could share with your student, or also just keep in mind, they got to be on time. You got to have that schedule and routine and the calendar, the syllabus. You have to know your instructors' names. I think a lot of times students don't learn names. It's, hi, miss. They're going to have to know their instructor and what their hours are and the best way to contact them. They're going to have to worry about books and supplies. There are such things as books still sometimes. They're going to have to find their, where their classes are. Just all these different things that y'all can look at. But I like this last one. Meet 2 people in each class. You really have to network and get some peer support in your classes, especially if you're going to be doing group work. But I like what it says here. Which of these could you help them with beforehand? Okay, these are just some useful resources that you can click on when I send you the thing. The first one is, you want to click on that, David? Or who has this? Guide to Assessing College Readiness for Students Who Learn Differently. I love this. This comes from Landmark College, which is a college just for students with learning disabilities. And can you click on it? Or is it this one?
It's not showing up here.
Well, I don't want to mess it up. It has a checklist, like, can you read 200 pages a week? Do you know your disability and accommodations? Are you able to focus for so long? It's just specific things that you can look at now and see what areas you might need to work on. The big changes, that's a neat app that you can download that helps you look at colleges. It also talks about employment and adult life. And then this high school to college transition questionnaire, this is a questionnaire we do with students to see where their confidence is. Do they feel like they're ready academically? Do they feel like they know what they want to pursue as a career? Do they feel like they have the support they need at home? Do they think that they're going to be successful? Have they read their their testing and understand their disability again? All those things.
The presentation went down real quick.
Presentation down?
Yeah.
When I clicked on that link,
Oh, that's right. Did you click on the link after I told you not to click on the link? This is my husband as being my tech guy. Okay, we getting it up?
I'm working on it.
Okay. Well, y'all just keep listening. We're at the end anyway. But tell them what you do, Ms. Schultz.
Hello again. I am the college and career counselor from Collin, but I'm embedded in Prosper High and Rock Hill High. TBD on whether I'll be at Walnut Grove when it opens, but we'll get there when we get there. And I'm at Prosper Mondays and Wednesdays, every other Friday, Rock Hill Tuesdays, Thursdays, every other Friday. My office here is in the library. My office there at Rock Hill is upstairs by the fashion classroom. I'm basically, number one, the liaison between high school and college. I'm there to help with any college questions. I help with career questions. Okay, I like this. What can I do with it? I'm there for kind of all of those post-secondary education paths and questions and how to find information. So that's what I'm there for. I'm a resource for your kids.
And not just for Collin.
Yep, not just for Collin.
And so is it best to, like, you said
suggested to our child that we wanted them to meet with you. Is that something you know?
Yes, emailing me really is the best. I've had parents email me to set up an appointment before. Sometimes I get I don't know why I'm here from the student. So, so having them email me is probably best. I have my call-in email is up there, but I also have a Prosper ISD email, so you can find me in the system as well. And then we figure out a time I can pull them from class or meet them during advisory. So.
And that'd be a great opportunity to have them contact her, have them email her.
Yes, yes, I do all the dual credit.
Yes, and she handles, if y'all didn't hear that, she handles dual credit too. Yeah, we're so blessed to have this.
So thanks for having me.
504, just some contact information for y'all. 504 is goes through the assistant principals. And so these are links to the assistant principals at Prosper and Rock Hill. So when you go to that, the contacts for special education, there's a lot more. Our diagnostician team, and then we've got Drew and Juliana and my contact information. You can reach out if you have any questions. If you're 504 and you have a question that I can answer, I'm happy to try to do that. I know that 504 is a little bit different, and I don't know as much about your paperwork and evaluation and all that, but I'm happy to help any way I can. Counseling department, there's the testing coordinators that can help you with the SAT, ACT. Kanisha Taylor is the new testing coordinator here. And at Rock Hill, it's Starla Laxton. Somebody have a question?
She was just asking who the testing coordinators were, so
Okay.
it's right here.
Okay. So much information. So what questions do we have? And was that helpful? I know it's a lot. Does it make you get motivated to go home and let loose of some of the push strings? Yeah. Yes, sir. And I'll repeat the question. He was asking about the use of an executive functioning coach. I have heard of executive functioning coaches. I've heard that sometimes it's done through tutors or advocates, or I don't know any specifically. I could check at our Family Resource Center to see if we have any of those on our list. We keep a list of providers that parents have recommended. Obviously, as a school district, we can't recommend anyone specifically. If anyone here has somebody to share with this gentleman, but executive functioning is so important. And again, if that's an issue, and if they're about ready to go to Collin or away to college, this class at Collin, the learning frameworks, it's all about that. And I think a lot of that depends on what professor you get. I would give you the name of somebody I know that teaches it, that is exceptional.
I was just going to.
Okay. So I don't know how helpful that was, but executive functioning is that whole being able to organize and plan and get that whole piece together. So, any other questions around? Yes, ma'am.
My son is planning on going to Texas Tech. And Tech does not require you to take the SAT, and they're not requiring you until 25, I believe. But Prosper is giving out the SAT, so he's taking the SAT last year, and I believe the year before. They did. Can we use that SAT to get away from the TSI?
Yes.
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 Oh, we can. So it doesn't matter what year he took the SAT, as long as he's taking it.
Yeah.
And what they might do, the admissions process does not require the SAT or the ACT, but then he gets accepted, he commits to Tech. And then when it comes time for class registration, they might say, okay, do you have SAT scores that we can put that exemption on your account? Or then do you need to take the TSI?
I only see an overall average on the SAT. Is there a way, and you said he had to make like a 4 something?
480 on the SAT English portion, 530 on the math.
Okay.
To be exempt.
Yes, to be exempt.
Okay. And that's just, and then, okay, well, I guess I can look at it. Because I don't know, I know like his overall average. I don't know what.
The individual, yeah. And if you log into College Board, it shows you each section score.
Okay.
Any other questions? Well, let me just say one thing. I want to say that I have seen so many of our students go on and be super, super successful in college. I just want parents to understand the differences and what to expect. And the main thing is for y'all to be aware of what they're going to need to be able to do so that we can start backing off and making them do some of these things on their own. Share this when you can share this PowerPoint with them or have them listen to me drone on. But, I think if they talk to some of their friends that have gone away to school, maybe before them, they'll hear from them, have them ask them, what is it like? And what's the difference between high school and college and how are you doing and all that. And I think that's often helpful to hear it from their peers. But we want them to be successful, but we also, want them to use those accommodations that they're not entitled to, but that they can qualify for if they go through the process for college. So, but we've had some kids be really, really successful. And I run into them sometimes out in the community and they're working and they've, gone off to school and doing great things. So aim high and just have very high expectations and just know what's out there to help them. So, okay. Well, I hope that's been helpful. Thank you all for coming tonight.
Can we back up one page?
Do you want to back up what for?
She was asking about the testing coordinator. Just leave that there. No, the
Testing coordinators.
Yeah.
Here. Or is it?
No.
I think it was like right before the question.
Yeah, it was right.
One more.
There we go. Okay. Thank you.
Is there, I know there's like US News and
Still
recording. Is there something that has rated the
Not yet.
accommodations programs across the country?
So there are a couple of different websites. It's one of those things where one list is probably not the top ones, but if you look at a couple of lists and start to see the same types of names, then you know those are the ones.
Okay.
Yeah, and I